All right, welcome into another episode of Note News. It is the holiday season, which means it's been almost a month since the Blues fired Drew Bannister and replaced him with Jim Montgomery as head coach. So has Monty been as effective as we hoped he would be? Are the Blues playing better under the new head coach? And if so, what's been you know what's helped them? And if not, then what has been the issue? We're going to talk about that as well as what we can expect moving forward. Excuse me, words are hard, but we're going to talk about all that today on Note News. Welcome into another episode, Alec. Happy holidays. Happy Holloways. How have you been? How's it going?
Happy Holloways indeed. Pretty good. Personal life has been a little crazy, but got through it, and now it's time to celebrate with some good Blues hockey. I guess
Yeah,
maybe the wins haven't been falling in line, but the games have been fun to watch.
for sure. You got like T minus 9 days till the Winter Classic. Are you excited? That's
Yeah,
gonna be
I'm
so
I'm
sick, dude.
so excited.
Where are you sitting?
One of the top seats. I'm not
Yeah,
sure where exactly, but one of the
it's gonna be awesome.
cheapest tickets I could find. They
Yeah,
were
still,
a lot of money.
still, that's gonna be awesome, dude. That's super
I
exciting.
can't wait.
Yeah, you can expect some cool content from us, I think, around the Winter Classic. So stay tuned for that. Today we're here to talk about Jim Montgomery. He was hired on his first game was November 25th. So here on December 22nd, almost a month. We would wait to do exactly a month, but that'll fall on Christmas Day. So we decided to go ahead and do it today here on the 22nd. We're gonna break down just exactly how the Blues have performed under Montgomery. But before we get into all of that, if you're new to Note News, we'd appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's really the best way to support us, especially that subscription. We're about to hit 250, so I think we're like one shy of 250. So if you want to get us there, and then really the ultimate goal is to just keep growing, get to 300. So if you want to help us do that, we'd really appreciate that. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so you can follow and rate wherever you listen. And then we're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. So check us out there to follow along for some other cool stuff. So Jim Montgomery. I think what we'll do today, the structure of today's episode, is we'll talk about what's been good, what's been bad, and maybe what's been ugly, or what did we decide was like the blues version of that, something like sharp on pitch and flat or something like that.
Hmm.
So try to keep that theme going, but I figured we'd start out with just a little bit of a summary, recap some general stats about the Blues under Jim Montgomery. So since November 25th, that first game in New York against the Rangers, since that time the Blues have gone 6-4-3. So they kind of got out to a hot start and have since cooled off a little bit, but 6-4-3. They have 15 points so far, and that's a points percentage of 577. So not terrible. I think looking at the entire NHL over that stretch, they continue to be sort of middle of the pack, but I think it's more upper middle, whereas before it was probably more lower middle. And there's only so much you can do. I feel like if you're Jim Montgomery with this roster, um, but I think we'll sort of get into all this today, but ultimately they have allowed 33 goals and they've scored 34 over that stretch. So that's a goal differential of one plus one. So hey, they're in the positive. They're in the black there. So what more can you ask? I feel like it was probably a lot worse before that, especially given those eight to one games, which is rough. The power play percentage is 13.8%, relative to 16.7 under Drew Bannister. So that has taken a dip. But on the other side of things, the penalty kill um, was 75.9% under Drew Bannister and is now under Montgomery in the past month has been 78.1%. So a small increase there. Um, Overall, Alec, I think it's sort of good to go into this discussion sort of having informed our viewers or our listeners sort of where we are at, generally speaking, before we get into specifics. And I think we're probably on the same page here. But in this month under the new head coach Jim Montgomery, overall, looking at the big picture, how would you say it's gone so far?
I would give it a big thumbs up. I think it's gone well. I think it's gone probably as well as it could have within reason. Maybe there's, a 10th percentile outcome where the team just really takes off under Montgomery, but I think within the realm of possibility and expectation, 6-4-3 is pretty good on a team that's not necessarily. I mean, I feel like what we've seen now, especially in this last week of play against four playoff teams, I think, is just that like the talent level is just a little bit different than a lot of the other teams in the league, but they've been in every one of those games. They've been playing really hard, been creating really good chances with lesser talent. And like, yes, I would love the wins to come on the score sheet, but like also it's a 6-4-3 record. That's a positive win differential. That's a positive points percentage. That's a success as I see it for what Montgomery's doing, especially when they're potentially trying to make the roster worse by
Hmm.
potentially at least trading away Brandon Saad. So yeah, I think it's been, especially with what he has, Montgomery's been a huge improvement over Bannister and really done a good job so far.
Yeah, for sure. We can do a little bit more trade talk maybe towards the end if we've got time. We'll at least discuss the P.O. Joseph trade because we haven't had a chance to do that yet on Note News. But
Mm.
like I said, we'll get to that later. I think I would tend to agree with you. Overall, I think it's been a plus. You said big thumbs up. I'm going to say medium-sized thumbs up. Just because if you had asked me, um, if you had asked me this question maybe on December 10th or December 11th, right after they beat Vancouver. At that point, their record under Montgomery would have been tallying it up here 5-2, so 5-2-0. That was a fantastic start. I don't think you could ask for much more. The two losses coming from Philadelphia and OT and Edmonton. So I mean, they were beating teams in that stretch like the Rangers, the Devils, the Jets, and the Flames, and then the Canucks. So, like all teams that, um, maybe Rangers aside at this point, all teams that are sort of expected to make the playoffs, maybe Flames aside too, they've had a good start, but I think they're sort of still hanging around the race. But fantastic performance against some pretty solid teams, I think you could say, for pretty much all of those, but especially the Devils and the Jets and the Canucks, I would say too. Probably lump them in that group, especially since they had just gotten Thatcher Demko back in that game. But since that point, since December 10th against Vancouver, where they got the 4-3 win in overtime, they have lost five of their next six. Their only win coming against the Rangers again. They lost to San Jose. They continue to struggle against San Jose. I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they haven't beat them in regulation uh, in like a couple seasons, right? Because I'm pretty sure that all of their or both of their wins so far against them this season were in OT or
Hmm.
shootout. Do I have that right?
Is
I could
shootout
be
or is
wrong.
OT then shootout? Yeah.
They did beat the Sharks, which is good, better than you can say about the Blues last year, but they weren't able to do it in regulation. So I mean, you'll take what you can get. A win is a win, but you'd like to see them perform more strongly against a team like the Sharks, who, to be fair, are on an upward trajectory. They lost to Dallas in overtime, a game that they probably shouldn't have gotten a point from at all. And then they lost three in a row, most recently against the Devils, Lightning, and Panthers. Three teams that are playoff contenders,
Really good.
Stanley Cup contenders, even for a couple of those. And um, I don't think you can knock them too hard for losing against them. I think it's just been a story so far under Montgomery of a really strong start, and then they're sort of dropping off, at least in the past couple weeks or so. Um, Anyways, so like I said, the structure of this will sort of do what's been good, what's been bad, and then what's been ugly. Maybe if we have enough time, we can do what's been really good to sort of balance out the positives with the negatives. But where do you want to start this?
I know it's typically in the order of good, bad, and ugly. I kind of want to start with ugly and sort of work up,
Sure.
though.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure. You got
so
one
I
in mind?
think the ugly, like you've been talking about, has been the. I don't think playing down in the same way that other Blues teams in the past have, but not winning the games that you should, and then stealing games that maybe you shouldn't win, like against Winnipeg or against the Canucks, and then turning around and losing to San Jose.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's kind of an ugly, like it doesn't make sense, and it just doesn't is not really indicative of anything about this team, and so it's hard to make a note of that. And I guess in those specific efforts, like against the Sharks, it just looked like they kind of came out and played flat and then fell down early to the Devils and battled for a little bit. But then once they scored, I think it was the third goal, it kind of felt like the game was over before things had really
Yeah.
picked up the chance to start. So this team is really playing hard and fighting really hard under Montgomery. But I guess there's a little bit of a worry if the goal differential is like more than two. Like if you're down by, and I guess that is tough just in any hockey game to come back from more than two goals. But
Hmm.
it feels like the effort level is so inconsistent for the most part because it's been on a whole a lot better, but there are just still some really random like instances that really feel like outliers and sort of make me question like what exactly is going on, especially I think with some of even the top lines of forwards. Like I don't know that Buchnevich has really been impressing me with his play in the last week or two, but that'll happen. So anyways, that's where
Yeah.
I want to start.
Sure. Yeah. I completely agree. Just inconsistency, like you said, and I think just looking at um, sort of a tale of two fortnights, I guess you could say, two groups of 2 weeks. Like those first 2 weeks were really strong, really. The Blues performed really well, and at that point, I think I tweeted about this. I was just like, I'm ready to run through a brick wall for this guy.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
just the way he was able to get the team to perform for those couple weeks, but then also his off ice comments. A couple of the videos that were posted of him in the locker room. It looked like he had a lot of respect in that room, and I'm sure he still does. But vibes were really high at that point. They got that new coach bump that a lot of teams get. That the Blues certainly got last season when Drew Bannister was hired to replace Craig Berube, or maybe not hired, but brought in as interim. Um, but since then, the second set of 2 weeks, right, has been has been sort of on the other side of things, and vibes I think are leveling out, sort of falling again, and that's tough to see. But yeah, I think you laid it out really well there. My ugly, um, I think I sort of mentioned it already. I'm just gonna say the power play. It continues to struggle. Um, for those who may not have heard the stat breakdown comparing pre Montgomery and since Montgomery. Before Montgomery, the Blues power play was 16.7%. Um, Not good at all. But since then, um, it's been, let me find the number again. It's been 13.8%. So that has taken a dip. And I think at times they do look more cohesive. It looks like they have a better structure, maybe a better game plan, but the execution just isn't there still. And that's been really tough to uh, see that continue to be an issue for this Blues team. I think Montgomery, his special teams coaching ability, um, really shines on the penalty kill, and that has improved, like I said earlier. But seeing the power play continue to struggle, even get worse when it comes to actual production, that's been rough. Um, But I don't know if you have anything to add on the power play there.
Yeah, I think I think I might table it though because it kind of goes into a larger discussion I want to have about more the bad about this team and less ugly.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Yeah, and I think to be fair, I think and maybe this isn't fair, but I think a large part of it is just their inability to draw penalties. That's been something we've seen them really struggle with.
it's true.
Um, they aren't getting to the power play as often or as much as a lot of the other teams in the league. And I'm not sure sort of what you do about that, uh, other than try to coach them to be in a better position to draw one. I mean, I'm not sure what really goes into that, and how much Montgomery can control that. Um, but I think that's been rough, especially when you see a player like Braden Shen. His penalty minutes have just spiked in recent weeks. He has spent a lot of time in the box, and it is hard to watch them spend so much time on the penalty kill and so little time on the power play. Um, yeah, it's been it's been it's just been difficult to watch, like I said. Do you want to
Yeah.
do good next or bad?
I have one more ugly that I want to
Yeah,
get to.
sure. Yeah.
I think that the Blues, and I say this is more ugly than bad because I think it's indicative of a negative or downward trend. The Blues defenseman handling the puck has been pretty atrocious.
Mhm.
It feels like offensively they can just contribute nothing. Maybe there'll be a stretch pass that goes through, connects, and creates a rush, but they haven't been able to finish on those chances, which I'll get to later. And but really, it's that feels like the exception and not the rule. Is that like with the puck on their sticks, these Blues defensemen just don't know what to do. It feels like they're really trying too hard to be active and involved in the play. When our forwards and especially like our middle six or even bottom nine have been doing a pretty good job, like gaining the neutral zone and even like winning battles down low. There, that's another, I guess, to spoil another good thing I want to get to. But these defensemen just seem to not really. I don't want to say understand because they're NHL defensemen, but like seem to not really have a grasp of the situation and the positioning of their other players on the ice. It feels like they're playing a very disconnected game from their forwards, and that's really hurting the overall offensive ability of this team.
Hmm.
With the exception, really, of I think Broberg. I think honestly, everyone, Suter, Fowler, Pareko, Falk, even Perunovic, Kessel, Tucker, etc., have
Yeah.
all had several moments each game where you just see them cough up the puck in either the neutral zone or like dump it in down low, but then not have a forward there to chase after it. So it's just a giveaway, or like dump it into the others to like your weak side, or really just like not
Hmm.
understand. And then also there've been a couple frustrating Falcon Perunovic moments where they'll receive a pass at the blue line and it's just too hot to handle and we have
Yeah.
to reset the zone. So um,
Right.
I think really why I say it's indicative is because the Blues defense as a whole, the team defense has actually been pretty good, but I don't even know that I can say that it's like a net positive with how it feels like this offense is sort of being dragged down by the inability to play complementary hockey from our defensemen.
Yeah. We can get to this in the more on the good side of this conversation, but I think whereas you're not quite seeing that on the side of the defensemen, you are seeing it with a couple of forwards, particularly I'll say Dylan Holloway and Jordan Kyrou, seem to have sort of had this revelation that good defense leads to good offense. And I've really liked what we've seen from Jordan Kyrou, especially this recent hot stretch. It's been awesome, but we're
Mm-hmm.
still on the negatives, so no positive talk here. If you're just hopping onto the stream, let us know in the chat what you think of Jim Montgomery's leadership and coaching of this team so far. Do you think he's been good? Do you think he's been bad? And maybe how much of the Blues' recent struggles can you attribute to him? Let us know what you think. But one more ugly that I'll add before we move on to slightly less ugly, bad, is the Blues in this recent stretch at 5-on-5. they are second to last in Corsi percentage. So essentially, that means they are allowing way too many shots of any variety, right? So Corsi accounts for any shot attempt, whether it's a goal, a shot that's on goal, whether it goes wide or whether it's blocked. It accounts for all shots. So their Corsi percentage over this past month is 45.13, which means that like of their of their time at 5-on-5, they're only getting 45% of the shots taken, right? So they're allowing way too many shots and they're not getting enough shots of their own. That's been bad. The only team worse than them is the San Jose Sharks. So um, you know that's not the company you want to be in. You don't want to be 31st in anything unless it's a negative stat like goals against, right? Um, so that has been rough, and I think that is something that we've sort of seen be a long term issue for this Blues team. Just an inability to capitalize on offensive opportunities and get an actual shot off, uh, but also an inability to prevent shots from being taken, whether it's you know defensive like style of play, whether they're more crowd the net, which I think we have seen a lot of, rather than defend with your stick and your body up close, whether it's an issue like that or something else. That's just been something we've continued to see from them as struggles on that side of things. But do you have any insight to add there, or do you want to move on to your one of your bad one of the things you've noticed that has been bad?
I think we can move on.
Sure. What you got?
In terms of the bad, I think what I wanted to say earlier was that I think the bad, which actually used to be a strength for this team under Bannister, and
Mm-hmm.
really I think under the first 2 weeks of Montgomery too. So really in the last 2 weeks is that the finishing is just kind of fallen off of a cliff. Like I said, I think they've been doing a really good job battling down low and winning behind the net, but
Mm-hmm.
like it feels like they're just getting bullied in front of the net, and maybe that's just a problem of roster construction and size of like expecting Walker Torpo Faxa is not exactly a big. I mean, Torpo's a big guy, but Walker and Faxa are like 5'9" and 6 feet respectively, and Kairu's not huge. He's got decent size, but I don't think strength is really his game. Neighbors is supposed to be the guy who wins down low, but he just hasn't been. So like it feels like the fight from this team is still there, but they just aren't able to do it in the slot or in front of the net really that other teams have.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's there's something on like on the tape that other coaches are taking advantage of, and there will be sort of another innovation to come, which honestly feels like it potentially could be, because it just feels like the structure is so easily filling in. But I'm thinking of like rush chances where it's a 2-on-1, but even then the opposing defenseman knows exactly how to like bully the puck carrier so that there can't be an easy look. And it feels like the finishing for this team has really been its weakness as of late, because they've been setting up such great chances. Like that's the thing
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
I'm almost not as worried about, is it looks like the structure is working so well offensively with their creativity and with their
Mm-hmm.
just hockey ability. But the lack of finishing and the lack of ability to like put these goals in and bury it, which to me feels like getting beat by the defense and less the goalies, is sort of a worry, and not one that I don't think they can't turn it around,
Mm-hmm.
and not one that I don't think they won't, because I think they've been fighting really well, really hard to do so. But it
Mm-hmm.
feels like there needs to be another step for Montgomery, and I think that'll come. I just think in the last couple weeks or so, it hasn't been there.
Yeah. And I think that is sort of related to, or let me ask you this: do you think that is a related issue to what I just brought up with the low Corsi percentage? Is it a lack of taking those opportunities, or is it a lack? I guess you sort of answered that. You sort of said they're setting up the plays. So I guess does that
Hmm.
point to you that
Yeah,
it's just
I think
the
they're
lack of?
taking the opportunities, but it's just that they're not winning. Like they don't. It's hard to describe. They're
I
not
think
like
I
battling
think
hard against bigger defensemen, and then
yeah.
on like ripping past one-timers and such. It's like the setup and everything is there. They just haven't been able to bury it, which is more like skill related.
Yeah, and you sort of said it already, right? It feels like they're getting beat by defensemen, not the goalies. And
Hmm.
I think that is related to what I just said, right? With the Corsi percentage, when you're getting beat by a defenseman, usually that means you don't get the shot off at all. And so that's I think that is a related issue. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. A couple comments in the chat. Someone said the Blues are not a playoff team, better without Bannister, but not playoff ready. I think this is something I would tend to agree with. I was a little bit high on them coming into the season, and I was definitely super high on them. Like I said, like a couple weeks after Montgomery had been coaching the Blues, I was like, playoffs, baby, here we come. But I think the past couple weeks have brought me back to earth, to the point where I
You
am
never
sort of
know.
holding off from saying anything at all, whether I'm leading one way or another. I think I am really like sensitive to the ebbs and flows of a sports team, right? I think I really buy in when it's good, and I'm just like out. Not that I'm a fair weather fan, but I'm just like I think I do ride the vibes, and so I think I'm just gonna abstain from making my prediction right now. And another comment, sort of asking if the general turbulence with players being moved in and out with trades, whether that could be a factor here. We'll sort of talk about trades, I think, towards the end of the episode, at least the P.O. Joseph trade, which we haven't talked to or talked about lately or at all on No News yet. So we'll sort of address that later on. But I think for my bad, what I'll say is bad and not ugly is their goals for over this stretch. They're tied for, let me do the math here. They're tied for 29th fewest goals for in that stretch with 21.
Wow,
Um,
that is awful.
the highest is 33, so it's not a huge disparity, but like over a month, it isn't going to be that huge. It is bad. And the reason they're tied for 29th is because um, the teams below them are all tied for 32nd at 20. So they're not far from being last in that regard. But the reason that I think it is bad and not ugly is because they've also allowed only 19 goals over that stretch, and that is tied for fourth best. So um, whereas the disparity between shots allowed and shots taken is pretty large in a negative regard. Um, the goals scored are actually pretty even, and actually lean the Blues' way a little bit, right? That um, at 5-on-5, I should say that's what this stat is 21 goals for at 5-on-5 and 19 goals against at 5-on-5. So it's not including power play or penalty kill. So yeah, 21 goals at 5-on-5 over the past month, tied for 29th in the league. Not good. Um, but I think the fact that
Hmm.
they're also not giving up that many at 5-on-5 is um, is a positive. However, I think a large part of that has been the goaltending, which has been, I would say, better in recent weeks. Over the past month, the save percentage at 5-on-5 for the Blues is 936, which is second best behind the Ottawa Senators, who have been on a really hot stretch lately. So Bennington and Hofer are performing better. I think particularly Hofer looks a lot better, and that I think is why that goal differential at 5-on-5, that goals allowed is so few. That's more of a goaltending thing, whereas goals for, that lack of goals for, I think that is an issue. And maybe, I mean, do you think that this was sort of something that was so frustrating under Bannister? It was just shoot the puck, right? Just shoot the puck. They weren't shooting the puck, and they're still not shooting the puck, and they're not scoring. Do you think this is a coaching issue? Like, do you think this continues to be an issue with Blues coaching, or is the fact that this has been an issue over now multiple head coaches, is that more of an indication of poor roster construction? What's your take there?
No, I actually think that almost I kind of spin this the other way in that you're right that they are allowing a lot more. Um, they're not scoring as much goals, which goes into that what I was talking about, lack of finishing. Which also, real
Hmm.
quick on that point, I forgot that also that was what I think is the problem with the power play. It's just lack of finishing and lack of winning around the crease. But anyways,
Yeah.
um, I actually kind of take this the other way, and that like I feel like the shooting has the offensive creation, um, the shooting has sort of been okay, at least especially in. I mean, obviously in winning efforts, yes, but I don't know. I think there's been an effort outside of the Devils game. They've registered over 24 shots every game. I think 24 or more. Um, and even in that excuse me, in that Lightning game, they were really firing pucks on net.
Hmm.
That isn't a huge bar to clear per se, but I still think it's showing an effort, and watching the games feels like the offensive creation is there. So I almost feel like kind of the pendulum is sort of bound to swing back the other way. And the lack of finishing that we know this team has been a strength for this team in the past, that potentially like we could see another good stretch of hockey here, and sort of this might just be a little back and forth throughout the season. Just that's what happens in a retool year, if you will.
Hmm.
And kind of they just I don't. The way I see it is that sports happened this week, and the Blues were on the losing end of sports happening because they just don't quite have the horses. But I actually think that the coaching offensively has been good. So now I'm sort of transitioning into the good. I don't know if you had any more bads, but I actually think
Yeah, go
like
for
the
it.
offensive coaching has been really, really good. And I think that they've really been making a dedicated effort to take more shot attempts. Not a lot of them are getting through because there needs to be, like I said, sort of the next level up, responding to how teams play you defensively. But I actually am kind of liking what I'm seeing offensively outside of the not scoring goals. And if the not scoring goals happens, which this seems to be an outlier for how Montgomery had the team playing for his other 3 weeks of his tenure, then there could actually be sort of another um, week of, like I'm saying, like week of good play, and then probably we'll at some point in the season be back for a stretch where they struggle, and like I said, that's just a retooling team. But
Hmm.
yeah, I kind of like what I've seen, believe it or not.
I think a large part of that is coming in sort of mid-range areas. The
Yes.
the attempts that they do get through when they do get when they do get a shot off, you're really seeing a lot of that in the mid-range area. Shots on goal, they're in the 99th percentile this season at mid-range, and shots on goal, they're also in the 99th percentile at goals scored. Or sorry, no, I have that wrong. They're in the 99th percentile of shots on goal at mid-range, which I think is, um, you know, indicative of the fact that they're willing to take that chance, but where it where it gets a little more, I guess you'd say, concerning is the high danger shots on goal. They are below 50th percentile in shots on goal per NHL Edge this season, and what I want to see from them is more of that. Honestly, I think that has been one of the biggest issues for the Blues offensively, is just an inability to um, pose a significant threat at close range in a high danger situation. That's something that they have struggled to do. But we're here to talk about the good, and I think the one that you laid out was pretty solid. So yeah, I like it. Now on the other side of things, there my good that I will say. Let me pull it back up here. I just had it not too long ago. Um, when it comes to high danger chances, when you look at the other side of things, right, um, the rate at which they give up high danger chances, the rate at which they allow high danger chances has been pretty low in a positive way over this stretch. over the past month with Jim Montgomery as head coach, the Blues have only allowed 95 high danger chances, and have only allowed 10 high danger goals on those 95 chances. So I think that's a positive, and I think a large part of that again is the goaltending. I just brought that up. Like a 930 plus save percentage over this stretch has really helped in that regard. Um, but I think goaltending is obviously part of the team. A lot of people like to point to a goaltender being sort of a cop out, or uh, a team performing well, most relying on the goaltender to do so is an indication of a bad team. I think that's sort of a mindset around a lot of teams in the league. Like I want to say, maybe the Jets, for example, Connor Hellebuck carries them in a lot of ways. But hey, look, like your goalie is on the team. He is a significant reason for your success, and why does it make you a bad team if your goalie's good? I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think there are other issues with this Blues team beyond their goaltenders, and I'm not saying that um, the positive performance of these goaltenders dispels that in any way. Um, but I think, giving credit where credit is due, Bennington and Hofer have been okay over this stretch. They've played a lot better than their early season, and I think, to Jim Montgomery's credit, since this is sort of his Jim Montgomery centric episode, I think where this is a good thing is his deployment of Joel Hofer. We saw Joel Hofer
Hmm.
sit for sometimes 20 days between starts under Drew Bannister. And you look at the numbers, I don't have them pulled up, so forgive me. I'm not uh, completely informed on this, but if you look at the numbers between, comparing the starts where he had 20 days of rest, compare those with the starts where he had closer to something like 10 days of rest. The numbers were so much better when he was getting more regular playing time. And I think that is something that we've seen from Jim Montgomery. He came out right away playing Joel Hofer in his first game against the New York Rangers, a game that they won, a game in which they put up like 40 something shots. I want to say 44, 44 shots in that game. Yeah. And their most all season at that point. And I believe, yeah, still their most all season. So I think his deployment of Joel Hofer has been more regular, and that has been, I think, sort of a tick in the plus column for Jim Montgomery. I think he has recognized Joel Hofer's talent and his ability to perform better when he has that more consistent playing time. And that was one of the things that was really frustrating for me to watch under Drew Bannister, and maybe in some way it was trying to help Bennington get to 152 or something like that. But I mean, I'm not sure if that's the case. I don't want to say that's all it is. But that was one thing that I think I asked you. I don't know if it was on an episode, but leading up in the days leading up to when Bannister was fired, I was like, where is Joel Hofer? Why haven't we seen him in so long? This is a guy that we're gonna need to be pretty solid, like he was last season. If this Blues team wants to become successful, they're gonna need someone to take over from Jordan Bennington when it's time to move on, because he's not gonna last forever. Either he's gonna leave when his contract is up. They might trade him. There was some talk of that over the off season. Nothing that really gained any traction in any way, but there was a lot of discussion around that. Should the Blues trade Jordan Bennington? A lot of people thought so. So when it's time for Jordan Bennington to move on, we're going to need someone like Joel Hofer or Colton Ellis or someone like that to take over. Right now, Joel Hofer's our best shot, and he looked fantastic last season. And I think to do him right in his development, but also for the team's success, it makes sense to have Joel Hofer at his best, right? I mean, and he's at his best when he gets that regular playing time, and that's what I've really enjoyed seeing from Jim Montgomery over the stretch is his use of Joel Hofer.
Yeah, I think on the goaltending point, even on in the last week, we've seen
Yeah.
really a concerted effort to deploy Joel Hofer more.
Hmm.
So he started in against Florida and against the Rangers, and then
Hmm.
came in relief for Bennington in Tampa. And in his time playing, he faced 62 shots and allowed 4 goals, which is a uh,
Do the math. Come on.
930 I think it's around 930 save percentage, like the stat you pulled. But I mean,
Okay.
4 goals on 62 shots. That's really phenomenal. And in that, even that's allowing 2 goals, and then 0 goals when he came in for the third period, essentially, and a little bit way through the second in the Tampa game versus Bennington, who started in the Devils and played against Tampa and has given up 7 goals, facing 38 shots. So that is
Hmm.
a stark difference. 4 goals on 62 versus 7 on 38. And it's really just about giving your team a chance to win. And just if we're being honest, like how they're playing, Hofer's giving his team a better chance to win. And I think Montgomery's recognized that and is playing him in the big games. Like Florida was at the time, I think, the fourth best team in the league. Now they're, I lost it. They are among the top. Here we go. They are number, geez, 6. Sorry about that. Tied for 5th. So yeah, I mean, one of the best teams in the league, the reigning Stanley Cup champions, on a night where Sergei Bobrovsky was standing on his head, stole that
Yeah.
game for them.
Yep.
Hofer responded in kind. And so
Absolutely.
Blues goaltending seems to just be a strength for this team. And
Hmm.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. Just to break down sort of like game by game. First of all, in the first month and a half of the season, before Jim Montgomery took over, Joel Hofer had 6 starts. But in the less than 1 month since, he's had 6 starts. So really getting deployed a lot more heavily, especially in the past couple weeks. He's played on December 10th, 15th, 19th, and 20th. So we got those back-to-back start, or not back-to-back starts, excuse me, but he took over for Jordan Bennington against Tampa Bay, and played 24 minutes. So in that stretch, just looking at his starts, New York Rangers win 930 save percentage. Winnipeg Jets win 957 save percentage. Vancouver Canucks win 880. He allowed 3 goals on that one, but faced 25 shots. And the Blues were able to scrape away that OT winner against them. But then New York Rangers again win 929 save percentage. He took over for Jordan Bennington and only faced 7 shots, saving all of them. So that doesn't really, that's they lost that game, but that is not Joel Hofer's fault at all. And then against Florida a couple nights ago, they lost in overtime, but he had a 926 save percentage, right? He allowed 2 goals on 27 shots, so continues to be a solid performer um, over this past stretch with Montgomery. He had a rough beginning of the season, and I think that yeah, I sort of broke it down already because this was my talking point, but I've really liked what we've seen from Joel Hofer over this stretch.
I mean, even if you want just like a really basic stats comparison, Jordan Bennington on the year, 8-13-3, 1 shutout. He's got a 3 flat goals against average and an 896 save percentage. 8-13-3. Joel Hofer, 7-3-1 with 1 shutout to match, and 263 goals against and a 909 save percentage.
Hmm.
That's a pretty big difference. And I
Yeah,
know it's like we on this podcast have been calling for it, but like the stats kind of don't lie.
yeah, for sure. Comment in the chat. Hofer looks rough. Looks like he's sort of overcommits, and while it hasn't cost him yet, he comes under fire a lot, and it looks like he struggles at times. Maybe I think that is in his defense. I think there is a little bit of truth to that for sure. But in his defense, I think playing behind a guy like Bennington, who like you said, might not be fantastic, but I think he makes some of those like crazier saves, but also makes um, more standard saves where he doesn't have to go all out. He makes those look like a little bit easier. I think his technique is really good. So I think that is like maybe a point in Joel Hofer's favor. But even if he doesn't amount to anything more than like a really solid backup or a really solid 1B, I would be happy with that, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
goaltender development is tough. The Blues have gotten really lucky in what been able to do with their string of young goalies in recent years. So as long as they can get just a solid backup, or like I said, a solid 1B, I'm happy with that. I think that would be
Yeah.
fantastic.
this has been a really extended discussion. So last thing I'll
Yeah,
say is that like I want to make it clear I don't think I am, or I'm not, and I don't think you are either, like calling for Binnington's job and for Hofer to take
no,
over as the starter. But just
yeah,
like he in his looks, he's been really impressive. I would say with his production, and yeah, like you said, if he ends up just being a really good backup or 1B, that's awesome. That is like
for sure,
a 100% hit on a drafted and developed goalie.
for sure, absolutely. Do you have any other good that you want to talk about
Absolutely.
Montgomery? What you got?
I think sort of what I've talked about earlier. I think this team really bought into that. I know the interview when he came out, the interview that came out when he, signed on as the head coach, was that he wants
Hmm.
us to play like blue collar hockey for a blue collar
Yeah.
city. You know, a
Hmm.
feel good thing that maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't, but they're doing really good to fight and battle down low, like behind the net. I think they've done a really, really good job, both like getting numbers advantages, usually having someone lurking out on the wing or crashing down by the goal net, and then like following the person chasing the puck. Excuse my voice. And I think they've done a really good job also like fight it's guys who even this was a weakness for them like last year or 2 years ago, like Braden
Hmm.
Shen. He couldn't win a puck battle to save his life. And now it
Yeah.
feels like he's found some fight and is showing the young bloods how to scrap down low on the boards. And it feels like that's becoming an identity of this team, is not even so much like yes, forechecking, but specifically like on the boards down behind the net, and that's really wearing down some of their defensemen in the offensive
Yeah.
zone, which is like creating those looks. They just need to find a way to bury that. But I think they've done a really nice job fighting in that way.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say before we shift to talk about P.O. Joseph and maybe a couple other players. My last good that I'll say, and I think there's an argument to be made that Montgomery has nothing to do with this, but I think if you look at his track record when he was with the Blues before, I think this could be something that you give him at least partial credit for, just breathing a little bit of life and a little bit of energy into particularly Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas, who under Montgomery have sort of come to life. Kyrou in particular, shooting 21.6% under Jim Montgomery, and I don't think that's a coaching thing. I think Jordan Kyrou's just been, and it could be a coaching thing, right? Maybe Jim Montgomery is encouraging Jordan Kyrou to take certain kinds of shots or certain kind of looks. But really, I've loved what we've seen from Jordan Kyrou. 8 goals over that stretch, compared with his first 22 games of the season, which I believe he had 6 goals in that stretch. So um, really liked what we've seen from Jordan Kyrou. I will continue to be a Jordan Kyrou defender. Um, and then Robert Thomas, he's had a fantastic December, right? What have you seen
Yeah.
from Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou over this past month that I think there's points to be made for them as individual players. Robert Thomas has always been a fantastic playmaker, and I don't think Jim Montgomery is the reason for that. But what have you seen from them that you think maybe could be at least partially attributed to having Jim Montgomery as their head coach?
Yeah, I mean, Kyrou, I think he broke down really well, and I think sort of you said earlier is that the defense in his game has also really taken a massive
Yeah.
step forward this year.
Hmm.
But I think you broke down Kyrou well. I want to talk about his matching contract partner, Robert Thomas. Just as a check-in, people, since he's come back from injury, Robert Thomas has 18 points in 16 games, and he is a +8 at a 15.6 shooting percentage, and his average time on ice is 21 minutes. So he's serving the amount of time that like number one defensemen serve, and he is over a point per game since coming back from injury. And that's like after having a really quiet week after his 2 point effort against the Rangers on last Sunday. He's had 1 point in his last 3 games, and he's still over
Hmm.
a point per game. If you want to get that down to just in the month of December, he's at 10 points in 10 games, four goals, 10 assists. The thing that I think has changed with Thomas is it feels like he's shooting more. It feels like he's
Yeah.
trusting, putting the puck more on his stick, and that's an improvement because, yes, he is one of the best passers in the league. I know I have said this on this podcast before, and I really stand by it. I get Barkov gets a lot of attention because of their cup run. Totally deserved. Barkov is a great player. I think Robert Thomas is like the same player. Like they
Yeah,
play
there's such good
so
comps.
similarly. Barkov maybe a little bit better defensively and at the faceoff dot, but Thomas I think offers a little bit more creativity and upside offensively. But they're like very similar players to me. And one of them is considered like one of the 20 best skaters in the league, and the other one is one of the 25 best and doesn't get time. Anyways, so yeah, it feels like Thomas is really putting the game on his stick more, which I think is a really good thing. And I think part of that is him just not really gelling well with guys like Jake Neighbors or Montgomery trying him out essentially with like essentially promoting the second line wingers to be the first line, and then trying to get Kyrou and Booch on some different looks. But yeah, it feels like Thomas has adapted so well to whatever is thrown at him and is somehow gotten better since coming back from injury.
I'm here for it. He looks so good. Last thing I'll say on him is on like the shooting percentage note. Um, in his beginning of the season, right, pre Montgomery, 10 games, he only took 19 shots and had a shooting percentage of 5.3. He only had one goal in that stretch.
It is abysmal.
Um, Not good. And I think we were a little bit worried about him, right? Where's the Robert Thomas that we know and love? Since returning from injury, or since, sorry, not since returning from injury, but um, since playing under Montgomery, he has taken 25 shots and is shooting 20% for 5 goals. Um, Better, I think you would say. I think you would say that's better. I know you would say that's better. So,
And he's
uh,
over a point per game for doing it.
yep, I I love that we have Robert Thomas back. It's been so awesome to see. But I
It's
think you
such
I
a
think you gave
privilege
a
to watch him play hockey.
oh yeah, for sure. I've really enjoyed his resurgence, his re-emergence or reappearance, we'll say. It's been good to have him back.
Like I
Missed
think
you, old
to
friend.
to soapbox for like 30 more seconds. Like in my
Yeah.
lifetime, watching guys like Prime Senko or Ryan O'Reilly or I don't know Prime TJ Oshie, whoever you want on there, Steiner, etc. Like there have been some
Hmm.
really special forwards. Senko, I think, standing out among the crop, but he was very much a like sort of specialized weapon that they just deployed really well. He could shoot and he could score, and boy was he good at
Hmm.
it. And I'm not even saying that like Robert Thomas is a better shooter than Prime Tarasenko. But in my life watching Blues hockey, they have never had a player this complete and this like talented at so many levels. Like the Blues have very much been a team of specialization and filling roles, but they have never had a complete player like Robert Thomas. And just watching him take the ice, wearing the blue note every night, like it's so special. This is such a special player, and just like my plea to Blues fans, I know we all get upset when things don't go well and get mad at like when Kyrou isn't scoring goals, and I get that, but like Robert Thomas is a special player, and let's please appreciate what we have because
Yeah.
it's just unbelievable. This doesn't happen, once every decade.
Yeah. Like the team or not, or like the direction of the team or not. You gotta like Robert Thomas. He's so good. He's undeniable. Or he's inevitable. Yes. Robert Thomas is inevitable. Let's shift now to talk a little bit of trade talk here, starting with P.O. Joseph, who was just traded to the Penguins. Before we get into that, I just want to give the plugs one more time. If you're new to Note News and are enjoying our discussion and stuff like that, we'd really appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Um, Last I checked, we were at 249 subscribers. So if just one person gets us to 250, we'd appreciate that. And then get us to 300. Let's keep it rolling. So we'd appreciate that. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so you can follow and rate wherever you listen. We'd appreciate that. And we're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod, where we post a lot of other cool stuff if you want to follow along and hear announcements, things like upcoming guests, when we're going live. If you want to know when we're going live, subscribing to our YouTube channel or following us on socials is the best way to know. So, yeah, let's talk P.O. Joseph. He was just traded, sort of not traded back because the Blues signed him as a free agent, but he returns to his old team via trade. The Blues traded him to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for future considerations. And I think you was this sort of what you were alluding to when we talked last week, where we broke down the Cam Fowler trade. Which, by the way, if you want to hear our thoughts on that, check out last week's episode. You sort of said that you thought another move was coming in the defense group. Was this it, or do you think there's still more to come? Like, what's your impression of the P.O. Joseph trade?
This definitely could have been it. And it probably will be, like, realistically, especially before
Yeah.
the trade deadline, which isn't until March. Probably I would expect the trades to quiet down now until, I mean, I guess maybe what we're about to talk about, but which I don't know. I feel like maybe it's because, okay, that discussion will happen in just a second here. On the Joseph trade, he was honestly taking up a roster spot, and Kessel and Tucker are like our AHL guys, so maybe they want to give him more run versus Joseph, who's been around the NHL and sort of had more total minutes. So if that's the guy they want to part ways with, that's fine with me, and gives Perunovic more of an avenue to play, which I know people have been calling for.
Hmm.
And like, yeah, I think this is probably just clearing space now that they acquired Fowler to clear up the logjam a little bit and
Sure.
of the third pair defensemen. Um,
Which is funny,
but
but yeah, there was.
yeah,
Yeah, I think really we've seen a lot, especially this year already, a lot of sort of interaction and deals between the Blues and the Penguins, right? The Kevin Hayes trade, and then also the swap of second round picks so we could get Philip Broberg on offer sheets. There's been a lot of sort of transactions between these two teams. Um, I think that there's sort of a good working relationship there, and I think this is just sort of the latest indication of that. This could even be like a like I owed you one kind of thing. Like I wonder if getting that second round pick back, that we did trade away to the Penguins, getting that back so we could get Broberg. Like I wonder if it sort of came with like an IOU. And I wonder if this was it because the Penguins were in need of defense, especially just defensive depths, a body to put out there who can play solid minutes and a known variable, right? Because Pio Joseph um, is has played with the Penguins before, of course, and so they sort of knew what they were getting, and he's I think he got some really solid playing time and some solid experience on the Blues. Um, Production aside, right? He only had 2 assists in his time, and that's not a whole lot to write home about. Uh, but I think really this was something that the Penguins needed to shore up their blue line. I wonder if they'll deploy him with Letang again, which they did, I believe, last season and had some success with it. I wonder if they'll do that again. But really, I think this was a move that they needed to make, and I think it clears up a little cap space for the Blues, who were surprisingly pretty close to the cap. Um, it's not a lot of cap space, I know, but it does clear up some. And so I'm not too upset about it. Like really where my head is at is I feel a little bit bad for Po and Matthew Joseph and his parents. Like it's good that he gets to go back to somewhere that he's familiar with, right? But I think it is probably a little sad that he doesn't get to play with his brother. I know that if I was on a professional sports team with my brother, I like no matter where it was, I think I just want to keep hanging out with my brother. It makes you shed a tear a little bit, but um, yeah. Do you have anything else to add on P.O. Joseph? I was just going to say this sort of opens up maybe a wider discussion of who's going to get that slot. Um, I sort of talked when the Cam Fowler trade happened. I was worried that Scott Perunovic, after showing some promise and some capabilities, especially offensively and defensively too, which has been kind of cool to see at times from him. Not all the time, but in recent weeks he's sort of skyrocketed up. Like looking at sort of game score, which evaluates all aspects of the game, Scott Perunovic has been one of the better defenders by that metric um, over the past few weeks, the past month and a half or so. So that's been really cool to see. And I was worried that bringing in a guy like Fowler, who is very clearly going to be playing a lot of minutes for the Blues, um, I was worried that he would take away some playing time from a guy like Scott Perunovic. I thought that what we might see on the third pair was sort of a split of playing time between Perunovic and PO. Throw Matthew Kessel in there at times, or Tyler Tucker, unfortunately, at times. But I think P.O. Joseph moving out, like you said, there was weirdly this third pair logjam of defensemen who, and it's not like a third pair logjam in a good way, where you have a lot of talent up top, and then that just means that the solid players shuffle down and there's a logjam of good solid players at the third on the third pair. This was more so like okay solid talent up top and just a lot of mediocre players on the bottom. So a logjam in sort of like a weird way. Um, but I hope that Scott Perunovic, I hope that this means he'll continue to get some solid playing time because he has, like I said, showed potential, showed promise, and showed some capabilities on both sides of the puck that we haven't really seen from him yet. And honestly, with where the Blues are at right now, I think they should prioritize the development of players like that over making the playoffs. I don't think that's what is going to happen. I think they're really hungry to make the playoffs. That's a separate discussion. Um, but I'm hoping we see Scott Perunovic continue to get some um, regular playing time. But do you have any thoughts there on what it'll look like here on the third pair? Maybe occasionally the second pair, right? If there's an injury or someone's underperforming or something like that. Any thoughts on sort of how without P.O. Joseph, right, with him leaving, what's going to happen now? What do you think?
It does seem like they are leaning towards playing Perunovic more. He played both Florida teams.
Yeah.
And did he play in the game before that? Yeah, he did. He played against New Jersey as well. So it does seem
Yeah.
like that this was the move was to clear up space for Perunovic to play, which, like I said,
Hmm.
is something that people have been calling for. And it seems like Perunovic pretty much has that right spot on the third pair locked up, and they've been switching out between Tucker or moving around other guys to fill that role essentially. But yeah, I think the only other thing about back on the sort of P.O. Joseph trade was that for Joseph to be the guy to move on from is fine because he's the only one who they like were definitely not going to retain after the season. So I guess, getting some considerations, I guess. The only thing
Hmm.
is like if you could move Tucker or Kessel, maybe that gives there's a little bit more unknown there. So maybe you could get like a 7th round pick back instead of
Hmm.
technically nothing. But a 7th round pick is also a 7th round pick, and so realistically, that the return is probably as good as it's going to get. And so yeah, it seems like Perunovic is the guy that they want to be giving more time to, depending on how Broberg's feeling. I know he's sort of been dealing with some day-to-day stuff recently. And then it seems like Fowler and Suter are doing sort of, like I said, that old man tandem on the first and second pair to
Hmm.
just whoever's got the gas that night.
Yeah.
Um,
We've
but
seen we've seen a lot of Fowler on the top pair, I feel like, in recent games with Pareko. Um,
mhm,
we can get there in a second. Did you have one last point on that?
not really.
I was just going to ask, sort of, who do you think should be occupying the bulk of the playing time on that other side of the third pair, right? Because you've got Pareko, Fowler, Falk, Broberg, and Suter, all eligible. I mean, Pareko's going to stay on the top pair more than likely. Broberg, I think, is going to be on one of the top two pairs pretty reliably. Um, it looks like Falk is an established second pair guy, but maybe he shouldn't be. I don't know. And then Suter, I feel like he's just been all over the place this season, and I don't think he's been bad necessarily. I think you're about getting what you paid for, if not a little bit better. But who do you think should be occupying that spot on the third pair more often than not?
On the third pair,
Yeah, like on the other side of Perunovic, of those guys, like I said, Pareko, Broberg, they're probably set. But of those other three, Suter, Fowler, Falk, who do you think should factor in the most there? Like, who do you want to see playing alongside a Perunovic or a Kessel or a Tucker when that time comes?
the way I'm thinking about this is top down. I feel like Broberg is kind of taking a back seat right now on second and third pairs just until he feels physically able to handle the top pair. because I think the priority should be getting Broberg back on the top pair.
Hmm.
And otherwise, if I'm being honest, I think it should be Broberg second pair, and then whichever $4 million defenseman Pareko wants next to him, put the other one on the third pair.
Yeah.
Is how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd like to see Broberg work his way back to the top pair. I think he's been a victim of sort of overutilization since he's returned from injury. He started off so hot that we were like, at least I was like, top pair, come on, give it to me every night. I want Broberg up there. But he's been used a lot since he returned from injury. Like you said, he is starting to sort of take a back seat in recent games. Um, I think they did sort of get a little overzealous playing him so much. I'm doing a sort of series of pieces over on Bleed and Blue, the Blues fan-sided page, about like sort of checking in on the Blues offseason additions. The first one's up now, where I talk about Philip Broberg, as well as Radek Faksa. So if you want to hear all these thoughts on Philip Broberg in particular, go check that one out. Um, but yeah, I think he should work his way back to the top pair, but until then should be pretty consistently a second pair guy. Um, I think Pareko's pretty solidly going to be staying on the top pair. Like I said, I think Falk is probably going to be staying on the second pair. Really, I think I think I'd prefer Suter honestly on the third, just because early season and preseason when he was playing alongside Matthew Kessel, there was like a little bit of spark there. Not like blow you away or anything like that, but I think there was like a little bit of chemistry of um, the rookie and the vet kind of thing. The lesser known Elton John song, "Rookie and the Vets," but that was a bad joke. So I think I think someone like Perunovic, not like stylistically necessarily, because they're not the same player, but I think he could benefit from playing alongside a guy like Ryan Suter, who could just I think he could just teach him a lot, and for a guy that needs to develop the defensive side of his game, I think a little bit better. I think he could have a lot to learn from a guy like Ryan Suter, who's done it for a long time. So
I
yeah,
don't hate that.
yeah, and I guess that means Fowler on the top pair, which what do you think of Fowler so far? It's such a limited sample size so far, but real quick, what do you think?
I it is a really limited sample size. I think okay. I think good enough, I guess, but
Yeah.
still sort of indicative of where this team's at. Like if the Blues are really competing, they wouldn't have traded for Cam Fowler. And I just feel like offensively, like I said, Fowler was kind of a player I was thinking about earlier when I was saying like the Blues defensemen just don't know what to do. It feels like he's really trying to do too much, which he just does not have to do. Like this isn't the Anaheim Ducks. You have players and teammates, and Fowler was a player I was thinking of about like times he just dumped it in and no one has been around. And I think that's just like not yet being used to the team, and that's fine. Um, so I'm a little bit disappointed, or I should say I'm underwhelmed, but it's been okay, I guess. And
Yeah.
I think it'll get better, and I'm not really worried about that regard.
I don't think it's been anything other than pretty much what we expected of just like it'll be okay, it'll be fine, it'll be serviceable. Um, I think he could look better, but I think it's been fine for the most part. I don't know if he's a top pair guy. Um, I hope Broberg takes over that spot, like I said, but for now, that's where it looks like he'll be playing most alongside Pareko. So really, if he can just give Broberg a bit of a break when it comes to time on ice, that's fine by me. But yeah, this was a fun one. So if you're new to Note News, we appreciate you tuning in. If you're returning to Note News, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll try to keep this live stream on Sunday afternoon / evenings a weekly thing. So tune in next week for our next live stream episode. Um,
One closing question for you, John:
what you got?
does Brandon Saad get traded before the new year? Yes or
No,
no?
no, I don't think so. I think it's going to be an after New Year kind of thing. I think he does get traded. At least I hope he gets traded because he's just sort of the kind of guy that I don't know. It's he's not bad, and I wouldn't say he's mediocre necessarily. I'd say he's like between mediocre and good. I think he's just sort of like firmly in the middle. He's just solid. I don't know. I guess the word is just solid. And I don't think the Blues have much use for him, but I think someone else out there really could. So I think he does get traded. I'm going to say it happens sometime, sometime in the new year though. I think we've got the holiday roster freeze. I can't remember when that lifts. It's going to be after Christmas Day, but um, it's not going to happen till then. And after that point, you've only got a few games leading up to the Winter Classic. I think it could be cool to see Brendan Saad play against his old team in the Winter Classic. So I don't think so. But what do you think?
I think it should be at the trade deadline. I think it will be before New Year's, though.
All right, you heard it here first. One of us is going to be right, and the other's going to laugh. Wait, no, one of us is going to be wrong, and the other one's going to laugh. That's what it is. Um, Anyways, we appreciate y'all tuning in for this episode of Note News. Tune in next week, and we're, we might have another episode out later this week. Probably not a live stream, but with the holiday, it might just be next week. So at least tune in next Sunday. We'll try to do another live stream then. So we appreciate you tuning into this one. If you want to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, we'd appreciate that. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, follow and rate, and we're on socials at Note News Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. So follow along with us in those ways, and we really appreciate it. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Note News. And Alec, let me get a Let's Go Blues.
Let's go Blues!
Let's go Blues, baby. See you next time.